So when you see that, you realize our culture is not a learned behavior. It's literally in our DNA. So as much as they tried to cut us off from it, to beat it out of us, or to miseducate us, they couldn't take it away from us because it literally is us. So that's what I tried to capture when I designed the Yasimba DNA collection. I wanted to show people that our modern urban style and our ancestral roots are really the same thing. I wanted to show people that the creativity and originality that we have in our urban style now is nothing but an extension of our ancestral roots because it is in us. I wanted to show people that greatness is literally in our DNA. The Yasimba DNA collection is now available at yasimba.com. Yasimba, for those who remember what we've never forgotten.
I've been vaping, but it's safer than smoking.
You know, one Juul pod contains as much nicotine as 20 cigarettes. 26.
Huh.
God, seems like 1,000 years ago. I fought my way out of that cave, became Iron Man. Realized I loved you. I know I said no more surprises, but I was really hoping to pull off one last one.
The world has changed. None of us can go back. All we can do is our best. And sometimes the best that we can do is to start over.
I saw all these people die. I keep telling everybody they should move on. Some do, but not us.
Even if there's a small chance, we owe this to everyone who's not in this room to try.
We will. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. I like this one.
So you go to Africa and you see a guy doing a traditional tribal dance. And in the middle of the dance, the brother starts to sea walk. Now, he's never been to America and he's never seen anybody do the sea walk. And the brother from Compton, sea walking, has never been to Africa and he's never seen this tribal dance. So when you see that, you realize our culture is not a learned behavior. It's literally in our DNA. So as much as they tried to cut us off from it, to beat it out of us, or to miseducate us, they couldn't take it away from us because it literally is us. So that's what I tried to capture when I designed the Yasimba DNA collection. I wanted to show people that our modern urban style and our ancestral roots are really the same thing. I wanted to show people that the creativity and originality that we have in our urban style now.
You know, there's an old adage, an old saying. You guys have probably heard it before. They say it's better to let 1,000 guilty men go free than it is to let one innocent man spend a day in jail. A lot of people may not agree with that. A lot of people may not understand where I'm coming from with that. But for anybody who's been incarcerated before, I happen to be one of them. You all know I spent 2 years in prison. For anybody who's been incarcerated, you understand the physical as well as the psychological tortures that go into being incarcerated. And to have somebody sit through that, especially for a crime they didn't commit, it's unfathomable. I can't even imagine what it would be like to sit there and know that you are suffering this type of punishment for something you didn't even commit. Well, I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about America's regard for someone who they now know has sat through that injustice. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I also want to talk about the prison industrial complex as a whole. The justice system, the prison industrial complex, and how this is designed, not for justice anymore, but for profits. Ladies and gentlemen, phone lines are open. You can call in at 706-452-ROXX. That's 706-452-7699. Or you can Skype in using the Skype name, The Chamber Radio Show. I look forward to hearing from you all. Greatest theme song in radio.
So let me get this straight. I've been on air for an entire year now, speaking every and anything that comes to my twisted mind. And you haven't taken me off air yet? What is wrong with you people? Yo, welcome to the chamber. Recline, give me your free time. Let's analyze this nation with a refined mind. Let's keep trying to end the wars and throw the peace sign. Unify the pastor, rabbi, and imams and seek the divine. I do this for the Trayvons, the Michael Browns, the Eric G's, Ivories, the Ebonies. I seek the truth, they telling me lies. But you are tuned into the light, so let me open your eyes. Every weeknight on the mic, trying to speak right and exact information. Slash through the miseducation. You are tuned into the right station.
who's not in this room to try.
Hey, brother, there's an endless road to rediscover. Hey, brother, know the water's sweet, but blood is thicker. Oh, the sky comes falling down for you. There's nothing in this world I wouldn't do. The sky comes falling from home. Oh, brother, I will hear you call. If the sky comes falling down,
I like this one.
there's nothing in this world I wouldn't do.
So let me get this straight. I've been on air for an entire year now, speaking every and anything
go to
that comes
Africa
to
and you
my
see a guy
twisted
doing
mind.
a traditional tribal dance.
This is
And
designed
in the middle of the dance, the brother starts to
not for
sea-walk.
just.
Now, he's never been to America and he's never seen anybody do the sea walk. And the brother from Compton, sea walking, has never been to Africa and he's never seen this tribal dance. So when you see that, you realize our culture is not a learned behavior. It's literally in our DNA. So as much as they tried to cut us off from it, to beat it out of us, or to miseducate us, they couldn't take it away from us because it literally is us. So that's what I tried to capture when I designed the Yasimba DNA collection. I wanted to show people that our modern urban style and our ancestral roots are really the same thing. I wanted to show people that the creativity and originality that we have in our urban style now is nothing but an extension of our ancestral roots because it is in us. I wanted to show people that greatness is literally in our DNA. The Yasimba DNA collection is now available at yasimba.com. Yasimba, for those who remember what we've never forgotten.
I've been vaping, but it's safer than smoking.
You know, one Juul pod contains as much nicotine as 20 cigarettes. 26.
Huh.
God, seems like 1,000 years ago. I fought my way out of that cave, became Iron Man. Realized I loved you. I know I said no more surprises, but I was really hoping to pull off one last one.
The world has changed. None of us can go back. All we can do is our best. And sometimes the best that we can do is to start over.
I saw all these people die.
Yes, y'all. That was George Clinton, Atomic Dog. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the chamber. I'm your host, Andre Roxx, Mr. Independent. And of course, you are tuned in to either KYBN Radio, the World Advantage Network, Real People Talk Radio, WNIA, or Hip Hop News Source Radio. That's HHNSradio.com. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I guess we had some audio issues earlier in the show. I guess I'll keep it real. It's my fault. It's my fault. There's a little button on the front of the microphone that you got to click to mute it, and I clicked it. All right, so not going to blame this one on anybody else. It's my fault. I clicked the button, and you guys didn't hear a word I said for the first segment of the show. My apologies. So let me go back and talk about this gentleman real quick here, just to give you the background story. And I'm going to quickly go through it because we do have a lot to get through on today's show. Richard Phillips spent 46 years behind bars for a murder that he did not commit. He was finally exonerated last March when somebody else finally admitted to the murder. The state of Michigan has decided that they are going to pay him. And I know this sounds like a large number, but I want to break this down real quick. They're going to pay him $1.5 million for 46 years of incarceration. That is an insult, ladies and gentlemen. I know, $1.5 million. You're like, oh my God, that's a lot of money. That breaks down to $32,000 a year. $32,000. I want to just hip you to this. I know a lot of us think that our job sucks, but most of us at our job do not have to suffer nearly the indignities that Richard Phillip had to suffer while being incarcerated. For those of you that don't know what being incarcerated is, it's not what you see in the TV and the movies. It is much worse. And I'll get into that in a minute. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I spent 2 years in prison myself. And I'll just break down what that is. But most of us don't have to suffer nearly those types of indignities. And the average American makes $59,000 a year. $59,000 a year. So for this ordeal, for them literally taking 46 years of this man's life, the average lifespan of a human being in the United States of America is 76 years. They took 46 of it. They left him with 30. And though there is no amount of money that could possibly make this up to him, $1.5 million is an insult. $32,000 a year? That's insulting. That is, I can't even begin to describe how big of a slap in the face that is. The state of Michigan slapped this man in the face. They said, hey, you don't deserve basically anything for the fact that we wrongfully convicted you and sat you in a prison cell for 46 years. Why? Let's be honest. Because Richard Phillip is exactly who the prison industrial complex was designed for. At the time, young African-American male. We talk about this all the time here on the Chamber. The 13th Amendment. I know a lot of people talk about the 13th Amendment. And they talk about, oh my God, this is the amendment that freed the slaves. But most people haven't read the 13th Amendment because it shows what the United States' real goal was. 13th Amendment reads like this. Well, let me read it the way most people read it, and then I'm going to read you the actual words that are there. Most people read, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist within the United States of America or any place subject to its jurisdiction. That's how most people read the 13th Amendment. I've even heard lawyers read it like that in court. Guess what? Those aren't the words that are actually on the paper. The words that are actually on the paper are neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted shall exist in the United States of America or any place subject to its jurisdiction. That's very important that you don't skip over that except. And if we start understanding the history of slavery here in the United States, we can understand why the 13th Amendment was actually written and why we have a prison industrial complex now. You have to remember, the United States of America became a global superpower on being able to provide low-cost, agricultural goods, mainly cotton and tobacco, but other agricultural goods like peanuts and there's a lot, but mainly cotton and tobacco. The United States could provide cotton, tobacco, all of these other products at a price that no other nation could, because in the United States of America, we didn't have to pay for they didn't have to pay for labor prior to 1865. So, Civil War gets fought. All the bloodshed, you know, we always hear about that, with the bloodshed and the tears and people dying, and we hear the stories about all of the heroes and all of that, right? Beautiful. But we never talk about dying, and we never talk about the economics. We never talk about the economics of the Civil War. The economics of the Civil War were that you had a bunch of farmers, plantation owners, in 1865 who were like, hey, listen, we get it. You fought a war. Slaves are free now. Beautiful. But we can't compete on a world market with our slaves gone. So, government, what you guys going to do about it? And the government said, you know what? We know you need free labor. But we can't have slaves anymore. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you your slaves back. But we just can't call them slaves anymore. So they replaced the word plantation with penitentiary. This is when we started to get the prison farms. Yeah. You guys saw the movie Life. That's an example of a prison farm. So we got these all over the nation. The plantation owners decided that they were going to turn their farms, their plantations, into prisons. And now they get free labor. But you got to call them prisoners now. They decided we can't call it shackles anymore. We're going to call them handcuffs now. We don't need a slave ship anymore. We just need a prison bus. And guess what? These farmers got their free labor back, because then the United States of America went and started rounding up young African American men at a ridiculous rate. They instituted laws called black codes, which were going to subsequently be instituted or turn into Jim Crow laws. But things like it was illegal. Literally, it was illegal in most southern states to be black and unemployed. Literally, you could get up to 6 years in prison for being black and unemployed. Loitering on a work day if you were black was illegal. In other words, standing around on the street, let's say you had a day off, you had a job and you had a day off, you could get a year in prison for that. They essentially made it illegal to be black and go about your daily life. And what did that do? That filled these plantations, aka prison farms, up with young black men who had just been released from slavery, and now they could incarcerate them again, enslave them again, under the guise of the 13th Amendment. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, that's still going on today. So the prison industrial complex began and had its roots right then and there, because basically the southern farmers were like, hey, you know, you fought a war, fine, but we still got to keep the economy going. We still have to be able to provide low-cost goods. And if we have to pay workers to work our plantations, we can't compete with other cotton-growing nations like Egypt. So this is where it all began. So this gives you insight into why it's no big deal for a state to lock somebody up incorrectly. Because we like to think of the prison industrial complex, we like to think of our justice system as something that is designed for justice. It's not. It is designed for profit. So they don't really care that they lock somebody up. They care that they got 46 years of labor out of this man. And I know a lot of you guys are saying, well, you know what? We don't live in an agricultural nation anymore. We don't live in that type of nation where we need that kind of free labor anymore. Agriculture has been mechanized. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, slavery has never left the United States of America. We have changed our industries, but almost every industry in the United States of America could not survive without free labor. Couldn't. This is why, excuse me, over 400 of the Fortune 500 companies in the United States of America still use prison labor. I want to get into the economics of that in a minute. But as we speak about this wrongfully convicted man, I want you to understand what he went through. Let's begin with the fact that this man was yanked away from his friends, his family, his children, his wife, had done nothing wrong, and was completely separated from his life. Let's start with that. I want you to think about your own life and where you would be mentally if someone came into your home in the middle of the night. You're just going about your day, and unexpectedly someone comes into your home in the middle of the night, grabs you, and separates you from everything that you've built, everything that you love, everything that you care about, everything that you hold dear. Let's start there. Imagine what you would feel. And you could do nothing about it. They just grabbed you in the middle of the night, put you in handcuffs, and hauled you away. And told you you would never see your children again. You would never see your wife again. You would never see your husband again. You would never see anything. You would never go back to work. Everything that you've done, whatever project you were working on at work, it's gone. That trip you had planned next week, it's over. And for the rest of your life, they're telling you, for the rest of your life, you are going to spend in a 6x9 cell with bars on the windows. That's our starting point. We have to go to our break. When we come back, I'm going to tell you from somebody who sat for 2 years in a prison cell. I'm going to let you know exactly what it's like sitting in that prison cell. But first, we're going to go to our musical break. If you're tuned in on our radio slot, so if you're tuned in on KYBN, WNIA, or Hip Hop News Source, we're going to go to Jeffrey Osborne, Can You Woo Woo Woo? If you're tuned in on our video stream, we're going to go to a word from our sponsor. Either way, we'll be right back here on The Chamber, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned.
Telling everybody they should move on. Some do, but not us.
Even if there's a small chance, we owe this to everyone who's not in this room to try. Small chance, we owe this to everyone who's not in this room to try.
Brother, there's an endless road to
Small chance, we owe this.
brother. Know the water's sweet, but blood is thicker. Oh, if the sky comes comes falling down for you, there's nothing in this world I wouldn't do. What if I'm far from home? Oh brother, I will hear you call. If the sky comes falling down for you, there's nothing in this world I wouldn't do.
So you go to Africa and you see a guy doing a traditional tribal dance. And in the middle of the dance, the brother starts to sea walk. Now, he's never been to America and he's never seen anybody do the sea walk. And the brother from Compton, sea walking, has never been to Africa and he's never seen this tribal dance. So when you see that, you realize our culture is not a learned behavior. It's literally in our DNA. So as much as they tried to cut us off from it, to beat it out of us, or to miseducate us, they couldn't take it away from us because it literally is us. So that's what I tried to capture when I designed the Yasimba DNA collection. I wanted to show people that our modern urban style and our ancestral roots are really the same thing. I wanted to show people that the creativity and originality that we have in our urban style now is nothing but an extension of our ancestral roots because it is in us. I wanted to show people that greatness is literally in our DNA. The Yasimba DNA collection is now available at yasimba.com. Yasimba, for those who remember what we've never forgotten.
I've been vaping, but it's safer than smoking.
You know, one jewel pod contains as much nicotine as 20 cigarettes. 26.
Huh.
God, seems like 1,000 years ago. I fought my way out of that cave, became Iron Man. Realized I loved you. I know I said no more surprise.
Yes, y'all. How y'all feeling tonight? That is Jeffrey Osborne. Can you woo, woo, woo? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the chamber. I'm your host, Andre Roxx, Mr. Independent. And of course, you are tuned in to either KYBN Radio, the World Advantage Network, Real People Talk Radio, WNIA, or Hip Hop News Source Radio, that's HHNSradio.com. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Before the break, I was telling you guys about what it's like to sit in a prison cell. Now, I want you to remember, this man endured this and did absolutely nothing wrong. Nothing. He didn't do a thing wrong. He was wrongfully convicted. So, they take you from that cell, or from your home, from your life. In an instant, your life is gone. In an instant. Most people don't understand what that means. Everything just goes away in an instant. And then you stand in front of a judge. You got 72 hours and you're thinking to yourself at this point in time, well, they're going to solve it. They're going to figure out that it wasn't me, or at least the judge will be merciful and give me a reasonable bail. Because the Constitution, right, it guarantees me no excessive bail. Because bail is not supposed to be punitive. Ladies and gentlemen, see, we're under the assumption that the law looks at us as if we are innocent until proven guilty. So bail is only designed to guarantee that you come back to court. It's not supposed to be punitive. In other words, it's not supposed to punish you. But that's not how it's practiced. So they set your bail at a ridiculous number that you'll never be able to afford. In my case, it was $500,000. And at this point, you start to realize that the justice system is not about justice. And then the idea starts to sink in when you're there and you're sitting in this cell. The idea starts to sink in. Wait a minute. I didn't do anything wrong, but nobody, including the judge, the jury, nobody seems to care. And you look around and you can reach your arms across the cell and touch both walls. That's how wide it is. And you see the steel bars in front of you. You see a stainless steel cold toilet caked in feces from God knows when. Because it ain't like they show you in the videos, in the prison shows and all of that, where everything looks at least like it's clean. No. No, they very rarely clean in there. And you say to yourself, God, is this where I'm going to spend the rest of my life? And you start to realize in that moment that right or wrong doesn't matter. Truth doesn't matter. Now, if you're really tight on cash, they're going to assign you what's called a public defender. I call them public pretenders. And that's when you really start realizing you're screwed. The guy might come and meet with you once before it's time to come to trial. And he's been handed over 200 cases that year. He spent a total of about 15 minutes with you before you stand before a judge and plead for your life. Now this is, believe it or not, the good part. You haven't really experienced prison yet. As of right now, you've just been in holding or detention, and everything is okay. I mean, everything's not okay, but you don't realize it yet. Your life is over as you see it already. And then the judge looks you in the face and the jury looks you in the face. And you're standing there in an orange jumpsuit. And they're not judging your actions based on what you've actually done. They're looking at you. They're just looking at you and making an instant assumption. And keep in mind, you haven't showered in a few days. You haven't shaved in a few days. You're standing there in shackles in an orange jumpsuit. You look like a criminal. And this guy in a $2,000 suit is telling them all of these horrible things that you've done that you haven't. And they're peppering in every bad thing you've done in your life. That pack of gum you stole from the convenience store when you were 12. And you know you're screwed. This is the good time, believe it or not. Because this is the time where you still have hope. They convict you. And then they remand you to a facility. Now, this man was convicted of murder, which means that they remanded him to a maximum security facility. So they couple days later, they put you in a bus and they drive you out to your home prison. Your home away from home. And if you're lucky, after they throw some kind of powder on you that burns for 2 days and make you take a shower in the most disgusting and filthy showers on the planet in front of 10 other men, you go to this thing called prison orientation. And basically, what prison orientation is the guards beating the snot out of you and everybody standing there to let you know who's in charge. And then they walk you into your cell. And at first you're like, okay, it's a little bit cleaner. It's a little bit nicer. But then you see the guy sitting in there next to you. And chances are, because you're convicted of murder, he's also going to be convicted of murder. But he's been there a lot longer than you. Let me tell you something about prison. You don't have anything to do but exercise and lift weights all day. So the fact that he's been sitting there for 20 years, this guy is huge. And you pray that he's not violent, because you got no chance. Not in a 6x9 cell. I'm not even going to get into everything else because we got to move on with the show. But let me just tell you this much. The humiliations and the pain that you will suffer are second to none. Now imagine going through this for 46 years for something you didn't do. And then when you come out of that cell, they finally admit that you didn't do it. After they have taken the majority of your life, the majority of your adult life is gone. They say, hey, that was only worth $32,000 a year. How insulting is that? I want to get to why our prison system is the way that it is. Our justice system is the way that it is, because it has nothing to do with justice. When I was in prison, I was one of the few people there who had a high school diploma and a college education. So I was fortunate enough that I got a job in the law library. Not right away. I did some other things first. But I got a job in the law library, and that gave me access to a few different things that most inmates didn't have access to. I had internet access from time to time. I could do a lot more research. And one of the big things is, for those of you that don't know what the law library is, that's a place where inmates go when they don't have the money for an attorney to try to fight their case. And something really astounded me when I was working in the law library, because I was helping a lot of people with their cases. I wrote a lot of legal briefs. I wrote a lot of appeals. I actually helped about 13 guys get out of jail. But something really stunned me. And it was how many people in that prison who came to the law library had unshakable, undeniable evidence that they did not commit the crime. That they proved beyond, now I consider myself to be a reasonable man, and they proved to me not just beyond a reasonable doubt, but beyond any doubt that they did not commit the crime. One really sticks in my mind. It's a guy we used to call Boom. I'm not going to put his real name out here. African-American male in his 50s, not well educated, but it's a decent guy. Didn't have enough money for a real lawyer, so he got a public pretender. And he had been convicted, of kidnapping. Now, when the kidnapping took place, he had not only a credit card receipt, but a video of him in another state when it happened. At a 7-Eleven, time-stamped. Coincided with his credit card receipt. His public pretender lawyer failed to get that evidence introduced into court. He ended up with 6 years in prison for a crime he could not have committed. I saw the case for myself. And it was very sad. He was convicted not because he was guilty, but because he didn't have the money to fight the case properly. And it surprised me how many guys were there for the same reason. I would say, now of course there were a lot of guys that came through the law library that were guilty of the crime and were just trying to beat the case. But I would say about a third of the guys that came through had unshakable evidence that they did not commit the crime, but couldn't afford a good enough lawyer to present that evidence. And they're sitting in prison for a crime they did not commit. That shocked me to see how many people were actually there. I know there's this joke going around. Oh, everybody in prison is not guilty and this and that. Yeah, I get it. But you know what? There's a lot of people in there that are innocent. And the system kind of looks at people and they say, especially when you got somebody who's, from the urban environment and all of that, they say, well, you know what? Even though they may not be guilty of that, I'm sure they did something else. They just look at them like, you're a bad guy. We know you're a bad guy. That's the attitude that we get, especially if you're young and black. Absolutely. It's no secret that the United States population is only 13.7% black, but it's almost 87% of the prison population is black. Why is that? Because it's the way that we get viewed when we go to court. When we come back, I want to talk about why the United States of America needs the prison industrial complex on an economic level, because I don't think that many people examine that. We kind of try and separate economics from justice, but they're all one and the same, especially with the privatization of prisons. But right now, we are going to go to our top of the hour musical break. This is that long break, ladies and gentlemen. This is the 10-minute break. So we're going to start off with a little bit of James Brown, The Big Payback. Then we're going to go to Cameo, Word Up. If you're tuned in on our radio stream. If you're tuned in on our video stream, we're going to go to a word from our sponsors. Either way, we'll be right back here on The Chamber, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned.
The world has changed. None of us can go back. All we can do is our best. And sometimes the best that we can do is to start over.
I saw all these people die. they should move on. Some do, but not us.
Even if there's a small chance, we owe this to everyone who's not in this room to try.
Hey, brother, there's an endless road to rediscover. Hey, brother, know the world is sweet, but blood is thicker. Oh, if the sky comes falling down for you, there's nothing in this world I wouldn't do. What if I'm far from home? Oh, brother, I will hear you call. If the sky comes falling down for you, there's nothing in this world I wouldn't do.
So you go to Africa and you see a guy doing a traditional tribal dance. And in the middle of the dance, the brother starts to sea walk. Now, he's never been to America and he's never seen anybody do the sea walk. And the brother from Compton, sea walking, has never been to Africa and he's never seen this tribal dance. So when you see that, you realize our culture is not a learned behavior. It's literally in our DNA. So as much as they tried to cut us off from it, to beat it out of us, or to miseducate us, they couldn't take it away from us because it literally is us. So that's what I tried to capture when I designed the Yasimba DNA collection. I wanted to show people that our modern urban style and our ancestral roots are really the same thing. I wanted to show people that the creativity and originality that we have in our urban style now is nothing but an extension of our ancestral roots because it is in us. I wanted to show people that greatness is literally in our DNA. The Yasimba DNA collection is now available at yasimba.com. Yasimba, for those who remember what we've never forgotten.
I've been vaping, but it's safer than smoking.
You know, one Juul pod contains as much nicotine as 20 cigarettes. 26.
Huh.
God, seems like 1,000 years ago. I fought my way out of that cave, became Iron Man. Realized I loved you. I know I said no more surprises, but I was really hoping to pull off one last one.
The world has changed. None of us can go back. All we can do is our best. And sometimes the best that we can do is to start over.
I saw all these people die. I keep telling everybody they should move on. Some do, but not us.
Even if there's a small chance, we owe this to everyone who's not in this room to try.
Hey, brother, there's an endless road to rediscover. Hey, brother, know the water's sweet, but blood is thicker. Oh, if the sky comes falling down for you, there's nothing in this world I wouldn't do. What if I'm far from home? Oh, brother, I will hear you call. If the sky comes falling down for you, there's nothing in this world I wouldn't do.
So you go to Africa and you see a guy doing a traditional tribal dance. And in the middle of the dance, the brother starts to sea walk. Now, he's never been to America and he's never seen anybody do the sea walk. And the brother from Compton, sea walking, has never been to Africa and he's never seen this tribal dance. So when you see that, you realize our culture is not a learned behavior. It's literally in our DNA. So as much as they tried to cut us off from it, to beat it out of us, or to miseducate us, they couldn't take it away from us because it literally is us. So that's what I tried to capture when I designed the Yasimba DNA collection. I wanted to show people that our modern urban style and our ancestral roots are really the same thing. I wanted to show people that the creativity and originality that we have in our urban style now is nothing but an extension of our ancestral roots because it is in us. I wanted to show people that greatness is literally in our DNA. The Yasimba DNA collection is now available at yasimba.com. Yasimba, for those who remember what we've never forgotten.
I've been vaping, but it's safer than smoking.
You know, one Juul pod contains as much nicotine as 20 cigarettes. 26.
Huh.
God, seems like 1,000 years ago. I fought my way out of that cave, became Iron Man. Realized I loved you. I know I said no more surprises, but I was really hoping to pull off one last one.
The world has changed. None of us can go back. All we can do is our best. And sometimes
Yes, y'all. That is Cameo. Word up. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the chamber. I'm your host, Andre Roxx, Mr. Independent. And of course, you are tuned in to either KYBN Radio, the World Advantage Network, Real People Talk Radio, WNIA, or Hip Hop News Source Radio, that's HHNSradio.com. Welcome to the second hour of the show. We're talking about a gentleman who was wrongfully convicted here in the United States of America and spent 46 years in prison only to get out after having most of his adult life taken from him, to then only receive $1.5 million. That's $32,000 a year for his time. I want to talk about why the United States needs to incarcerate so many people. You realize in the United States of America, 2.2 million people of the 8.9 million people incarcerated in this world, the United States holds 2.2 million. Let me put this another way. The United States of America has 5% of the world's population. 5. However, the United States of America has 25% of the world's prison population. We lock up more people in the United States of America than the next 10 nations combined. Why is that? Why is it that we, here in the United States of America, feel the need to lock up more people than any other nation in the world? By the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you're saying it's a crime deterrent, it stops people from doing crimes, if we lock people up and all of that, let me explain something to you, ladies and gentlemen. We are not the most peaceful nation in the world. Not by far. We do not have the lowest crime rates of any nation in the world. So you would think because we're locking up more people, and it's not that we're like, I know there's going to be people say, oh, well, we're a bigger nation. No, we're locking up more people per capita. We're locking up nearly 1% of our population. We're not the most peaceful nation in the world. We're not the least crime-ridden nation in the world. We're not. So clearly, locking a bunch of people up doesn't work. So why is it that the United States feels that we need to lock so many people up versus our counterparts? Well, here's a little quietly kept secret. We in the United States of America still need slavery. The way that we have become and the way that we are still a global superpower is through slaves. Period. Period. There's no way around it. Oh, and I know people that, oh no, slavery went away in 1865. We fought a big, great, giant war for it. Yeah. If you believe that, I got a bridge to sell you. Let's go back to the 13th Amendment here, just so that we can read this again. Give me 1 second to pull it up, because I should have had it ready, but I don't. It says, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the parties shall have been duly convicted, shall exist in the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. In other words, there's a big exception to slavery, and that's incarceration. Now, in the United States of America, we need slavery in order to compete on the world market. I want you to think about this for a minute. Check your shirt, your pants, whatever's near you. Most items in the United States, most products that we have, they have a made in tag. And check it. Check what you're wearing right now. What's in front of you. Your computer even. See where it was made. Most of you are seeing right now made in China, made in Indonesia, a couple other countries, right? The reason that these countries make most of the products in the world is because it is the labor costs to make a product in China. And I want to be clear here, ladies and gentlemen. I own both an import-export company and a clothing company. So I can tell you this as a matter of knowledge. The labor cost to make something in China or Indonesia or somewhere else in the world are so low compared to the United States. Here in the United States of America, in order to hire a worker, you have to pay an hourly wage that is above the minimum wage. You have to pay health insurance, unemployment insurance, Social Security insurance. You have a lot of expenses into hiring someone. Whereas in China, for example, Shenzhen, China, I took a trip there. Actually, I've taken a few trips over there. The beautiful thing about it is their cost of living is so much lower. So I know a lot of people get mad. Oh, you can pay a guy $5 a day out there. Yeah, when you can rent an apartment for $20 a month, paying somebody $5 a day ain't too bad. When you can get groceries for the month on $15, $5 a day is not a bad wage. It's all scales, economy of scales. So I can run an entire factory for an entire shift for what I would have to pay one worker for a shift here in the United States of America. But a lot of people still want to put that Made in America stamp on their product. The reason they want to put it on their product is because we have a movement right now for people to only buy American made. But let's say this shirt right here. This shirt, I can't remember. It cost me about $35 or something like that. Now, this shirt was made in China. Yep, this shirt was made in China. So if I made this same shirt under the same processes that I would make it here, or it was made in China with, this shirt would have to run me about $300 because the labor cost would be so much higher that I would have to, they would have to pass that along to the consumer, and they'd have to sell this shirt for about $300. So these companies say, you know what, we still want to be made in America. We want to put that stamp on there, but we don't want to have to pay the labor costs. So what we'll do is we'll go to the prisons and we'll use prison labor because we don't have to pay them minimum wage or health insurance. Heck, we don't even have to keep up safety standards in a prison factory. I can tell you, before I moved to the law library, my first prison assignment was I worked in a textile factory. We had a textile factory. We made textiles for a lot of the clothing companies that you know and love today. And I can remember a sign hanging over my workstation that said, "Goggles must be worn at this station. Severe eye injury possible." And I always remember looking at that sign every day when I would come into work. And I said, it'd be nice if I had a pair of goggles. But they didn't provide you with any. But anyway, they go into the prisons and they can pay a prisoner 86 cents a day to do that same work. And guess what? Now their labor costs are down. But they can put that stamp on there and say, "Made in America." And you guys think these guys are creating American jobs. Like, oh my God, this is made in America. Yeah, these guys are making American jobs. No, they're not. They're not. These guys are taking prison labor and they're fooling people into thinking that they're making stuff in America with free people, with free individuals who are making a minimum wage and, getting health benefits and things like that. Absolutely not. Makes for good publicity. But let me tell you, 400 and some odd companies of the Fortune 500 make their products or render services in prisons. Guess what? If you like Wendy's hamburgers, they were packed in a prison. Oh, Starbucks coffee? Not the Starbucks coffee that you buy from the store, but the stuff that you get from the grocery store. If you buy Starbucks brand coffee, guess what? That was packed in a prison. Jordache jeans, made in a prison. Victoria's Secret underwear, made in a prison. Oh, when you call customer service at T-Mobile and Sprint, guess what? There's about a 50% chance the person you're talking to on the other line is sitting in a cell. Yeah. Go ahead and give up your credit card information if you want to. Yeah, a lot of companies who don't want to insource their jobs to prisons all over the country. Half of Nike and Fila and Adidas textiles are made in a prison in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We'll talk more about the prison industrial complex because they're making money hand over fist. This isn't even the half of how they're making money. But we'll talk about that more when we come back. But right now we do have to go to our break. If you're tuned in on Facebook Live, we are going to go to a word from our sponsors. If you're tuned in on our radio streams, KYBN, WNIA, or Hip Hop News Source Radio, we're going to go to She's a Bad Mama Jamma by Carl Carlton. We'll be right back here on The Chamber, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned.
Best we can do is to start over.
I saw all these people die. I keep telling everybody they should move on. Some do, but not us.
Even if there's a small chance, we owe this to everyone who's not in this room to try.
Hey, brother, there's an endless road to rediscover. Hey, brother, know the water's sweet, but blood is thicker. Oh, if the sky comes falling down for you, there's nothing in this world I wouldn't do. What if I'm far from home? Oh, brother, I will hear you call. If the sky comes falling down for you, there's nothing in this world I wouldn't do.
So you go to Africa and you see a guy doing a traditional tribal dance. And in the middle of the dance, the brother starts to sea walk. Now, he's never been to America and he's never seen anybody do the sea walk. And the brother from Compton sea walking has never been to Africa and he's never seen this tribal dance. So when you see that, you realize our culture is not a learned behavior. It's literally in our DNA. So as much as they've tried to cut us off from it, to beat it out of us, or to miseducate us, they couldn't take it away from us because it literally is us. So that's what I tried to capture when I designed the Yasimba DNA collection. I wanted to show people that our modern urban style and our ancestral roots are really the same thing. I wanted to show people that the creativity and originality that we have in our urban style now is nothing but an extension of our ancestral roots because it is in us. I wanted to show people that greatness is literally in our DNA. The Yasimba DNA collection is now available at yasimba.com. Yasimba, for those who remember what we've never forgotten.
I've been vaping, but it's safer than smoking.
You know, one Juul pod contains as much nicotine as 20 cigarettes. 26.
Huh.
God, seems like 1,000 years ago. I fought my way out of that cave, became Iron Man. Realized I loved you.
Yes, y'all. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Carl Carlton. She's a Bad Mama Jamma. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the chamber. I'm your host, Andre Roxx, Mr. Independent. And of course, you are tuned in to either KYBN Radio, the World Advantage Network, Real People Talk Radio, WNIA, or Hip Hop News Source Radio, that's HHNSradio.com. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I keep forgetting to remind everybody that the phone lines are open. If you'd like to call in, if you got something to say, if you've been incarcerated, if you know about this, if you disagree with me, anything like that, call in. We want to hear from you. 706-452-ROXX, 706-452-ROXX, or 706-452-7699. The Skype lines are open, ladies and gentlemen, but we prefer you call in on the phone lines, but we'll take a Skype call as well. But if you got something to say, we don't have call screeners here. You get directly on the line with your man, Roxx. We want to hear from you. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the prison industrial complex. Like I told you guys before, when I was sitting in prison, I had some time to figure something out. Because, you know, when you're sitting in prison, you don't have a whole lot of stuff to do. You're kind of just bored. So, as I said, I worked in the law library. And I got to looking at how much these privatized prisons make. And I started with our own prison. And what I found out was that the state had a contract with the privatized prison company that they would pay them $38,000 a year. $38,000 a year for each inmate that was incarcerated in their prison system. Now, what ends up happening with that is if the state pays $38,000 a year, the prison company must take care of an inmate to a certain degree, and whatever they make over that, whatever it costs them to do that, whatever they make over that, of course, is their profit. So they would cut things like medical care. Ladies and gentlemen, to this day, my thumb hurts because I broke my thumb in the weight room when I was in prison. I reported it to the CO, the prison guard, and upon breaking my thumb, they put in a medical request for me. Of course, the doctors don't see you right away there unless it's a life or death emergency, and obviously breaking a bone is not a life or death emergency according to them. So they put in a medical request. It took them 8 weeks for them to schedule an appointment for me to see the doctor. 8 weeks. By this time, my thumb had already begun to heal incorrectly. And then they send you to the most incompetent doctors they can find. Now, at 8 weeks, they said, in order for us to fix your thumb, we have to re-break it. Me caring about my medical health and realizing that this doctor was a moron, I was not going to trust him to break a bone on my body. Therefore, my thumb healed incorrectly, and I received no medical attention for it until I was released from prison 2 years later. That's the type of medical care that prisoners are receiving. But they cut the costs. They cut other things like food. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But ultimately, $27,000 is what that prison was spending on housing their inmates every year, which means that they made an $11,000 profit. Now, this prison company owned quite a few prisons, and in just in my state. I calculated the money that they made just in my state. It was just over $42 $42 million a year net profit, because they cut things like medical care, food. This is the big thing. They made $42 million in net profit. That's before they allowed any company to come in and manufacture products or use prison labor, right? Because those companies are paying that prison system to do that. The way that they did that was they cut food. So the average male needs about 2,500 calories a day to survive. Their dietary guidelines gave us 1,700 calories a day. Now, I don't know if you've ever been hungry, but it is a horrible feeling. Now, I want you to think about walking around constantly hungry to the point of lightheadedness. This is how they coerce you into working into their factories. You're walking around, you're hungry, you're starving. After about 6 months or so, your family stops putting money on your books. It happens to every prisoner. Nobody can afford it. So you're sitting in the prison, no money, you're starving, and they say, hey, listen, you can come and work in our factories, and we'll pay you 86 cents a day. That's what I was getting paid, 86 cents a day. And guess what? You can go to the commissary once a week and you can buy some extra food. Now, I know there's a lot of people saying I wouldn't do it based on principle. And it's really easy to say that when you're not hungry. Walk around hungry for a few months and then say that. It's not an easy thing to turn down. So then you end up working for 86 cents a day just so that you can get enough food to feed yourself. Oh, by the way, they also do things like they don't give you toothpaste or toilet paper. You have to buy that. They don't really heat or air condition the place well. So I've been in situations where literally my cell wall was covered in a layer of ice. Well, when your cell wall is covered in a layer of ice, you want a pair of sweats or something warm. Well, guess what? They don't give you a blanket. You have to purchase it off of commissary. They don't give you sweats. You have to purchase them. You're going to go work in their factory. You're going to go work in their call center. And they're going to get dirt cheap labor out of you. 86 cents. I didn't say an hour. I said a day. 86 cents a day. In other words, they can run an entire factory. There were 13 men in my textile plant. They're running that entire textile plant for just under $12 a day in labor costs. So we still have to have slavery here because our economy is still based on slavery. This is that little quietly kept secret that they don't want you to know about, because they don't want you to know that the United States of America has never eliminated slavery. They want you to believe that we are this moral country, that we lead the way morally. And that's simply not the case. What they've done is they've simply changed the names of things. They know they still need slaves here in America. The fundamental foundation of our country is based on it. Every industry in our country is based on slavery. The agricultural industry is based on slavery. We still have prison farms in this nation, ladies and gentlemen. I think that it was estimated that 25% of the food that you eat at one point or another has been touched by a prisoner. Think about that next time you go to your cabinet. So, how does this translate to the justice system? Well, it starts with the justice system. Do you think for one moment these judges don't know that these prisons have to stay full? All you got to do is look at the numbers. Once again, the United States of America has 2.2 million people incarcerated, most of them for petty drug offenses. The only reason the United States is even now talking about rehabilitation for drug users rather than incarceration is because the heroin epidemic has spilled outside of the urban community, where it was easy to just railroad someone through the court system. Because people in the urban community, of course, they can't afford a good lawyer. They can't afford good representation. But once it spilled over, once people who started using heroin were no longer people who worked at McDonald's, but these were your teachers, your doctors, your lawyers. And they could start buying high-paid advocates to get them out of cases. Now all of a sudden, it became a public health issue and not a criminal issue. But most of the people locked up right now are incarcerated for petty drug offenses. And they're not incarcerated because of justice. One thing I saw while I was in jail was the guys who had the money to buy a good lawyer, they got out whether they were guilty or not. And the guys who didn't have the money, they stayed in whether they were guilty or not. Our justice system is not about justice, it's about dollars. Why does this bother me so much? I just read an article in CNN.com. And the article was talking about the state of Washington. And in 1993, the state of Washington put into law a law that was put into effect in most states. It was the 3 strikes and you're out policy. And Washington's was particularly harsh because it didn't just deal with violent crimes or felonies like most states. 3 convictions and you get a life sentence. And they were rethinking this policy, and they just rescinded this policy, and they're actually retroactively releasing people. But they decided that a particular group of inmates, mostly African American, would not be retroactively released. And it showed me that even though, by the way, that group of inmates were inmates who were incarcerated for petty crimes, like, either theft or drug-related crimes. And it showed me that they still need their slave labor. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is Washington State. This is the state where they pack Starbucks coffee in prisons. They still need their prison labor. They need their free labor. And their intention is to maintain that mainly among the African American community. See, I don't look at what politicians or people say. I look at what people do. You can tell what somebody's intent is by the actions that they take. And when I see them keeping more African American prisoners incarcerated and releasing more whites, it shows me they want to keep blacks locked up. We're in an interesting place, ladies and gentlemen, where we have to decide, is this going to be the land of the free? Is this going to be the land of the free? Are we really going to talk about freedom in this country? Because there is no real freedom in this country if we are basing our economy on removing people's freedom. And that's what we're doing right now. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our next break. When we come back from our break, we're going to go to final thoughts. But right now, let's see. We're going to do a little bit of Earth, Wind, and Fire. And then we're going to take it to a little bit of Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5. If you're tuned in on our radio stream, if you're tuned in on our video stream, we're going to go to a word from our sponsors. Either way, we'll be right back here on The Chamber, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned.
I know I said no more surprises, but I was really hoping to pull off one last one.
The world has changed. None of us can go back. All we can do is our best. And sometimes the best that we can do is to start over.
I saw all these people die. I keep telling everybody they should move on. Some do, but not us.
Even if there's a small chance, we owe this to everyone who's not in this room to try.
Hey, brother, there's an endless road to rediscover. Hey, brother, know the world is sweet, but blood is thicker. Oh, the sky comes falling. Falling down for you. There's nothing in this world I wouldn't do. What if I'm far from home? Oh, brother, I will hear you call. If the sky comes falling down for you, there's nothing in this world I wouldn't do.
So you go to Africa and you see a guy doing a traditional tribal dance. And in the middle of the dance, the brother starts to sea walk. Now, he's never been to America and he's never seen anybody do the sea walk. And the brother from Compton sea walking has never been to Africa and he's never seen this tribal dance. So when you see that, you realize our culture is not a learned behavior. It's literally in our DNA. So as much as they tried to cut us off from it, to beat it out of us, or to miseducate us, they couldn't take it away from us because it literally is us. So that's what I tried to capture when I designed the Yasimba DNA collection. I wanted to show people that our modern urban style and our ancestral roots are really the same thing. I wanted to show people that the creativity and originality that we have in our urban style now is nothing but an extension of our ancestral roots because it is in us. I wanted to show people that greatness is literally in our DNA. The Yasimba DNA collection is now available at yasimba.com. Yasimba, for those who remember what we've never forgotten.
I've been vaping, but it's safer than smoking.
You know, one Juul pod contains as much nicotine as 20 cigarettes. 26.
Huh.
God, seems like 1,000 years ago. I fought my way out of that cave, became Iron Man. Realized I loved you. I know I said no more surprises, but I was really hoping to pull off one last one.
The world has changed. None of us can go back. All we can do is our best. And sometimes the best that we can do is to start over.
I saw all these people die.
I keep telling everybody they should move on. Some do, but not us.
Even if there's a small chance, we owe this to everyone who's not in this room to try.
Hey, brother, there's an endless road to rediscover. Hey, brother, know the water's sweet, but blood is thicker. Oh, if the sky comes falling down for you, there's nothing in this world I wouldn't do. What if I'm far from home? Oh, brother, I will hear you call. If the sky comes falling down for you, there's nothing in this world I wouldn't do.
So you go to Africa and you see a guy doing a traditional tribal dance. And in the middle of the dance, the brother starts to sea walk. Now, he's never been to America and he's never seen anybody do the sea walk. And the brother from Compton sea walking has never been to Africa and he's never seen this tribal dance. So when you see that, you realize our culture is not a learned behavior. It's literally in our DNA. So as much as they tried to cut us off from it, to beat it out of us, or to miseducate us, they couldn't take it away from us because it literally is us. So that's what I tried to capture when I designed the Yasimba DNA collection. I wanted to show people that our modern urban style and our ancestral roots
Yes, y'all, that's Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5, The Message. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the chamber. I'm your host, Andre Roxx, Mr. Independent, and of course, you are tuned in to either KYBN Radio, the World Advantage Network, Real People Talk Radio, WNIA, or Hip Hop News Source Radio, that's HHNSradio.com. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. It's time for my final thoughts. Listen, I started off this show by saying it is better for 1,000 innocent or 1,000 guilty men to go free than it is for one innocent man to spend a day in prison. No one should have to suffer and have their lives taken away from them, especially for something they didn't do. you got to understand something. You go to prison, even let's say 5 years for something you didn't do, right? Your life has changed dramatically. I know we see the movies where wives wait for the husbands and they get out of prison and you know, they can just return to their life. That's not how it goes in real life. You get convicted of something you didn't do. You get out. Your family has moved on. They've in many cases forgotten about you. You don't have that job, that career that you've been working on. Everything has moved on, and you walk out of that cell with nothing. We have a standard in this country of convictions. It's called reasonable doubt. And I think that a lot of people who sit on juries forget that. If you have a reason to doubt, you can't convict. I'll give an example. Casey Anthony. Now, we all know, and I don't think that any reasonable person believes that that woman did not kill her daughter. She did. She killed her daughter. If I was sitting on that jury, based on the evidence that was presented, I would not be able to vote to convict her. Though I know she did it, I'm like 99% sure she did it. The defense rather, presented an alternative theory to the events that I cannot rule out. And that gives me the slightest reason to doubt. It's more likely that she did it, much, much more likely. But could somebody else have done it? Yes. I would have convicted her on illegal disposal of a corpse, but that's it. We have to start looking at that standard and pushing that standard so that we do not keep locking up people that don't deserve it. We also are really going to have to start looking at revamping the way we do business in America so that we're not dependent on the prison industrial complex to bolster our economy. That's one thing that people don't like talking about too much. You know, I watch a lot of CNN and MSNBC. I watch the money shows and all of that. And never do I hear about that element of our economy. It's a well-kept secret. But we have to rethink it. If we truly want to eliminate slavery in this country, and I'm not saying the word slavery, things that we call slavery, but the concept of slavery, because slavery is still being practiced under another name. But as Bill Shakespeare said, a rose by any other name smells the same. Smells as sweet. I know. So for those of you that are trying to correct me right now, I know I was being... Never mind. Forget it. It's the same thing practiced under a different name. So if we want to claim the moral high ground, we have to live it. Or at least have the courage to not try and hide it. Show your shame. Either way, ladies and gentlemen, the United States of America's hands are nowhere near as clean as they claim it is, that they claim they are. We have a system in place here, and it starts with the police, who are told basically like the slave catchers of old, to go round up the slaves. Then the courts are told to distribute the slaves, get the slaves to all these jails around the country so that we can get these people to work on different plantations. Then the private prison systems, their jobs are to assign the slaves to work. They're the slave masters. They're the overseers. And the inmates are the slaves. And the system is not about justice, it's about profits. Now, do I believe that we don't need a justice system, like nobody should be incarcerated or anything like that? Absolutely not. Please don't misconstrue what I say. What I'm saying is that system should be about justice. And you can never have a system that's about justice if you try to inject profits. Because people will always find a way to manipulate a system if there are profits involved. Ladies and gentlemen, that's my show. I want to thank everybody out there for inviting me into your homes, into your vehicles, onto your AM and FM dials, onto your laptops, your cell phones, your tablet computers, however you're listening to me today. I want to thank you for inviting me into your eardrums. It is always an honor and a privilege to have my voice heard, to have my opinion taken into consideration. Even if you disagree with everything I just said, I still appreciate you taking the time to hear me out. That's an honor and a privilege that I do not take for granted. So thank you very much for that. As always, y'all, remember, we don't have to like each other, but God said we should love each other. I'm your host, Andre Roxx, Mr. Independent. Till next time, y'all, peace and blessings. I am out.
Are really the same thing.